Have you ever felt like life was so quiet that a single wave over the fence could change everything? This is my story, Ethan, and the mysterious woman next door. One small moment sparked a journey I never saw coming. Stick around, because this isn't just about waves over a fence, it's about how we found each other in the silence. I'm Ethan, 30, a freelance web developer. My gig is building websites for small businesses that don't want to spring for a full tech team. I work from home, tapping away in a cozy room where morning light spills through the window, illuminating stacks of old books my parents left behind. Those books, with their faded pages, are how I hold on to their memory. I'm not a nostalgic guy, but there's something comforting about touching the things they loved. The house I live in is the one I grew up in. It's tucked in a quiet corner of a small town, where tree-lined streets and chirping birds replace the sound of traffic. My parents passed away 10 years ago in a car accident. It happened so fast. One moment I was a 20-year-old college kid, the next I was the owner of this house. I never thought about leaving. Maybe because this is the only place where I still feel them. In every crack in the wall, every creaky window frame. I'm not big on change. My life is simple. Wake up, brew coffee, sit at my desk, and sometimes tend to the flower beds my mom used to love. I like the stillness of this neighborhood. Nothing much happens here, no loud parties, no nosy neighbors. Just me, the sound of my keyboard, and golden afternoons when sunlight bathes the old wooden fence out back. But then, one Tuesday morning, everything shifted. I was on my porch, coffee steaming in my hand, when I heard the rumble of a moving truck. It pulled up to the house next door, which had been empty for 6 months. I didn't think much of it, probably a young couple or a family, like most folks around here. But when I looked up, I saw just one person, a woman. She stepped out of the truck, holding a clipboard, her frame slim, brown hair tied loosely back. She wore black jeans, a plain t-shirt and scuffed sneakers, mid-30s maybe. What caught my eye was how she moved quick, focused, like she had everything under control, all on her own. No movers, no friends, no husband, no kids. Just her, hauling cardboard boxes into the house. I watched from a distance, not wanting to intrude, but something kept my eyes on her. Maybe it was the way she paused for a moment, scanning the street like she was memorizing every detail. Or her eyes cautious yet curious, like she was stepping into a new chapter. I don't know. All I know is, in that moment, I felt a small stir in my chest. The next day, I was taking out the trash when I saw her in her front yard, kneeling by a flower bed, pulling weeds with careful precision. I wasn't going to say anything, but our eyes met. A fleeting moment, like we both got caught off guard. I blurted out, "Looks like a fresh start." Huh. I tried to sound casual, but inside I was kicking myself for sounding dumb. She looked up a little surprised, then smiled. A small smile, not dazzling but enough to light up her corner of the yard. "Here's hoping," she said, her voice soft but clear. Then she went back to her flowers, like the conversation was over. I didn't push it, just nodded and dragged the trash can back. But as I walked inside, I realized I was smiling. Over the next few days, we started exchanging short words over the low wooden fence between our yards, just simple stuff. "Morning, hot one today, huh? Settling in, okay," she always answered, brief but polite. I didn't try to make her talk more. Something about her told me she wasn't the type to open up eyes, but every time she responded, even with a nod or a one-word answer, the neighborhood felt a little less quiet. I started noticing small things about her. She wore an old silver watch on her left wrist, never took it off. Every evening, right at sunset, she'd water her plants, holding a green watering can, moving slowly like she was talking to each leaf. Her blue Suburb was always parked facing out, like she was ready to leave at any moment, and her porch light stayed on longer than anyone else's. As if she was keeping the dark at bay. Everything about her seemed deliberate, like someone used to handling life solo. I didn't know her name, where she came from, or who she was. But one thing was clear. She wasn't just a new neighbor. She was a change I wasn't ready for, but couldn't ignore. I'm not a people person. After my parents died, I got used to living alone, to the quiet, but when she showed up, I started realizing that quiet wasn't enough anymore. I wasn't lonely, or at least I hadn't thought I was. But when her eyes met mine over the fence, when her soft voice carried through the morning air, I felt a void I hadn't noticed before. She wasn't part of my life yet, not really, but every time I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, and saw her there on the other side of the fence, I knew one thing for sure: she saw me too. And for now, that was enough. After that first wave over the fence, I started noticing a new rhythm in my life. Every morning, around 7:30, I'd step onto the porch, coffee hot in my hand, bare feet on the cool wooden boards. I wouldn't admit it to myself, but I was waiting. And sure enough, she'd appear. On her side of the fence, she'd water plants, sweep the yard, or just stand there cradling a mug, her brown hair a little messy from sleep. "Morning," I'd say, raising my coffee like a toast. "Morning," she'd reply, sometimes with a small smile, sometimes just a nod. It depended on her mood. Nothing forced, nothing awkward, just two people, 2 yards, a low wooden fence, and short words filling the early morning air. We didn't know each other's names yet. It didn't feel necessary. She wasn't the type of neighbor who'd pop over with a plate of cookies, and I wasn't the guy to strike up long chats with strangers. But something about her made me want to keep going. Maybe it was how she answered short but genuine, or how she looked at me, like she was sizing me up, wondering who I was. One morning I stepped outside in an old college t-shirt. The logo faded a tear at the shoulder. I was checking the mailbox when she glanced up from her flower bed across the fence. "Still rocking the college gear?" she asked, a playful edge in her voice. I was caught off guard looking down at my shirt. "Only the clean ones," I said, trying to play it cool. "You got any nostalgic stuff you hold on to?" She grinned, a real grin, bright and warm. "A whole drawer of old band tees. Can't bring myself to toss them." That was the first time I heard her laugh. It was soft, but enough to startle me. I wasn't used to that sound, someone's laughter so close, not from a TV or a passerby. It was like a breeze cutting through the stillness of this town. After that, our talks got a little longer. Not much, just a few extra sentences. One day, I was fixing a leaky hose in my yard when she walked by the fence, holding a mug of tea. "Work from home?" she asked, pausing like she was genuinely curious. "Yeah," I said, wiping sweat off my forehead. "Coding, building websites." "I'm taking a break for a while," she said, her voice hesitating. I nodded, not pushing. I didn't want to be the nosy neighbor. If she wanted to share, she would. Moments like that kept happening. We'd chat about the weather, the overgrown shrubs, the stray cat that kept sneaking into her yard. Each time, the fence felt less like a barrier. She wasn't a stranger anymore, but she wasn't quite a friend either. We were somewhere in between, and I was okay with that. One morning, I stepped outside a little late, clutching a cold coffee. She was sweeping her yard, hair tied up, a light jacket flapping in the breeze. "Coffee's gone cold, huh?" she asked, her eyes mischievous. "Yeah, forgot to drink it," I admitted, a bit embarrassed. "You tea or coffee?" "Tea," she said, holding up her mug. "Coffee makes me jittery." I nodded, like that explained everything about her. "Tea suits you." She smiled, her eyes lighting up. "You know, I'm starting to like this neighborhood." I grinned, my heart beating a little faster. "Good, 'cause it's starting to like you." Those small, real moments made me realize I was looking forward to seeing her every day. We still didn't know each other's names, but there was a connection growing, slow and careful, like the flowers she tended every evening. And I knew, even if she didn't say it, she felt it brought a new kind of anticipation. Not excitement, exactly, but a quiet feeling, like knowing something was building between us. We still hadn't exchanged names, but the fence between our yards didn't feel like a divide anymore. It was more like a thin line we were both starting to cross. One Thursday evening in late September, the air had that first hint of fall chill, the kind that makes you want a long-sleeve shirt but not a full jacket. I was out back, screwdriver in hand, trying to fix a loose gate latch. It wasn't urgent, just something to keep my hands busy after a long day staring at a screen. The sunset cast a golden-orange glow over the yard, softening everything. I hadn't seen her all day. No morning plant watering, no porch light flickering on early, no sound of her familiar footsteps. I told myself she was probably out, maybe a meeting or a quick trip. I had no right to wonder, but I thought about her more than I wanted to admit. I was fumbling with the latch when her voice came from behind. "Need a hand?" I jumped, turning around. She stood on her side of the fence, wearing a hoodie with the hood up, her brown hair messier than usual, like she hadn't brushed it all day. She held a white ceramic mug, steam curling upward. Her eyes looked tired, but she managed a small smile, almost apologetic. I leaned against the fence, setting the screwdriver down. "You know how to use a drill." She laughed softly, shaking her head, terrible at it. "But I make a mean cup of tea." I raised an eyebrow, pretending to consider. "Tea, huh? Now I'm curious." She looked at me for a second, her eyes hesitating, then tilted her head. "Want to come in?" The question was light, casual, no pressure, but it stopped me cold. Not because I didn't want to, I did, but because it was so unexpected. For weeks, we'd kept things safe, talking over the fence, each in our own yard. Now she was opening a door, not just to her yard but to something deeper. "Sure," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Sounds good." She unlatched her gate for the first time. I stepped into her backyard. It wasn't fancy but neat, a small wooden table, 2 old metal chairs, a wind chime dangling softly, and a coiled garden hose on the grass. It felt real. Not the yard of someone trying to impress, but of someone building a place to belong. Inside her house, a faint scent of lemon and vanilla hung in the air, like she'd just baked or lit a candle. The living room was simple but warm. A bookshelf stuffed with paperbacks, a stack of vinyl records by a turntable, a gray sofa with a neatly folded knit blanket. On the coffee table, a few coasters sat stacked, small details that made me smile. They made her feel more real. She set her mug on the kitchen island, grabbing another from the cabinet. "Chamomile tea." "Okay, perfect," I said, hovering near the door, unsure what to do. She glanced over, catching my awkwardness. "Sit, I don't bite." I chuckled, settling on the sofa's far end. She brought the tea out a minute later, sitting across from me, legs tucked under, mug cradled in her hands. We didn't talk right away, just sipped tea, letting the silence settle. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like we'd done this 100 times. Then she looked up. Ethan, right? I blinked, surprised. It was the first time she'd said my name. How'd you know? She shrugged, a slight smirk. Saw it on some of your packages. I noticed things. I laughed. You spying on me? Just making sure my neighbor's not a creep, she teased. I took a sip of tea, grinning. So what do I call you? Sarah, she said, her voice soft. Sarah. The name fit her, gentle but strong. I repeated it in my head, committing it to memory. We started talking. Small stuff at first. I asked where she gets pizza in town. She said she hadn't tried many places but hates pineapple on pizza. I faked shock. She laughed hard. Then she asked about my work. I told her about picky clients, coding all night to fix one tiny bug. She listened, nodding, like she actually cared. The silence came back, but it felt different, deeper, like we were both waiting for something. I looked at her, her eyes on her mug, fingers tracing the rim. Lived here long? I asked, wanting to keep the conversation going. She looked up, her gaze distant. Just a few weeks. Before this, I was in a big city. How was that? She smiled, but it was a sad smile. Loud, everyone's always rushing. I worked in HR for a big company. Decent job, but not real. People say one thing, think another. I nodded, sensing the weight in her voice. So you came here? She paused, like she was choosing her words. Then she looked at me, eyes honest. Partly, the other part was needing to get away. I got divorced last June, signed the papers, and drove here. When I saw this town, I thought it was quiet enough to start over. Her words were light, but I felt their weight. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Starting over is not easy. She studied me, like she was checking if I meant it. You ever had to? I took a breath, setting my mug down. Not exactly, but 10 years ago, my parents died in a car crash. I stayed here because it's all I have left of them. This job started it for the money and it stuck. She tilted her head, her eyes softening. So we're both holding on to something, aren't we? I smiled, feeling a wordless connection. Guess so. She got up to refill our tea, but I wasn't done. I stood, stepping closer. Thanks for inviting me in, I said. She turned, smiling. Thanks for saying yes. That night, as I walked back through the gate to my house, I paused in my yard, looking at her porch light still glowing. The fence was still there, but it didn't feel as tall anymore. Sarah had opened a door, and I'd walked through. I didn't know what was next, but I wanted to stick around to find out. Sarah's invitation into her home felt like a door opening, not just to her space but to something in me. I started looking forward to our moments together, no matter how small, but after that night, she disappeared. The next morning her porch was empty. Her curtains stayed drawn. I stood in my yard, coffee cold in my hand, wondering if I'd misread something. Did she regret opening up, or was I overthinking it? I tried not to dwell, but it was hard. I checked her porch more times than I'd admit, only to see the light off, the yard still. I told myself she might be busy, might need space. But the silence gnawed at me, not because I expected anything big, but because I'd gotten used to our morning hellos, our waves over the fence. The next afternoon, as I was trimming the hedge, trying not to glance at her yard, I heard her back door creak. Sarah stepped out, barefoot, in black leggings and an oversized sweater. She held a steaming mug, her hair tied up but messy, like she hadn't brushed it all day. She looked tired, but when our eyes met, she gave a small, almost apologetic smile. Hey, she said softly, walking to the fence. Hey, I replied, setting the clippers down. I wanted to ask where she'd been, but I waited for her to speak. She hesitated, gripping her mug. Sorry for going dark. I needed a day to think. No need to explain, I said, and I meant it. I just thought you'd skipped town or something. She looked at me, her eyes softening. I'm not regretting anything, Ethan. I just needed time. Her words eased something in me. Good, 'cause I wasn't thinking anything else. She smiled, a real one this time. Thanks. I didn't talk much that day, but that short exchange felt like a bridge. It made things easier, safer. From then on, we saw each other more often. Not every day, but enough to become part of life. She'd invite me over for coffee, or we'd sit in her backyard, talking about everything from the jazz she loved to the stray cat that kept hanging around her place. One time, I was fixing an old wooden chair in my yard when she appeared, holding a mug of tea. You should paint that chair, she said, leaning against the fence, her tone teasing. You applying to be my interior designer? I shot back, pretending to frown. Nope, just saying it looks like it's about to collapse. She laughed. But I like your yard. It's you. I raised an eyebrow. You mean messy and in need of repair? She laughed again, shaking her head. No, real and sturdy. Her words stopped me. I wasn't used to someone seeing me like that. I just nodded, trying to hide the warmth in my chest. Moments like that showed me how much I'd missed simple human connection, not small talk with the grocery clerk, but the steady presence of someone who made life feel fuller. But it wasn't always smooth. One night, we had dinner at her place. Nothing fancy, spaghetti salad and a cheap bottle of red wine. We were more comfortable now, laughing easier. I was telling a story from college, about the time I fell asleep in the library and got locked in. I thought she was listening, but then I noticed her eyes drifting, her fork stirring the pasta without eating. "You okay?" I asked gently. She startled, snapping back to the moment. "Yeah, sorry, just tired. I didn't bite." "Something on your mind?" She went quiet, her fingers tracing the stem of her wine glass. Then she sighed. "Sometimes I forget how normal this feels. Then I remember how fast it all fell apart last time." I stayed silent, watching her, letting her go on. She looked at her plate, her voice steady but heavy. "My ex-husband, he wasn't a bad guy. Not at first. He was charming, smart, thoughtful, but things changed. Not in a big way, but little things. Subtle control, silent treatments, affection that just faded, and I wasn't shaking myself." She spoke like someone who'd carried the story too long. "I have a hard time trusting good things," she added, her voice quieter, "because the last time I did, I was wrong." I leaned toward her, searching for the right words. "Sarah, I don't want anything from you that you're not ready to give. I'm not in a rush." She looked at me, her eyes lingering, like she was searching for truth in my words. Then she said, soft but certain, "That's the first time anyone's said that to me." Her words hit me like a stone dropping into a still lake. I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded. But I knew that moment changed something between us. After that night she pulled back, not a lot, but enough to notice. Fewer texts, less time together. She'd say she was busy or smile and say, "See you tomorrow." I didn't push. I didn't chase. I just left a bag of her favorite coffee on her doorstep with a note, "When you're ready." A few days later, she showed up in my yard holding a mug of tea. "I still owe you a coffee," she said, her smile real, like a weight had lifted. I grinned, pointing to my porch. "Then come in. I'll make tea this time." We sat on my porch, her first time there. She brought her tea, I brewed coffee. We talked about small things, the squirrels stealing nuts from her garden, the jazz song she'd played that morning. Laughter came easier, the air felt lighter, but I knew deep down she still carried scars, and I knew I was willing to wait. After Sarah opened up about her past, I felt a shift, not a dramatic one, but a steady new rhythm. We didn't rush to define what we were. No labels, no promises. But each day I realized she wasn't just the woman next door anymore. She was Sarah, the person who made me smile at the thought of a new day. We started spending more time together, not glued at the hip, but in natural moments, like we'd always belonged in each other's space. One morning, I stepped outside with my coffee and saw her chatting with a stray cat she'd named Shadow. "He says he likes your place better than mine," I teased, leaning on the fence. She laughed, petting the cat. "That's 'cause I feed him on time, unlike someone who spills coffee." I faked a scowl, but my heart warmed. Those little jabs, small but fond, showed me how long it had been since I felt this someone truly present in my life. One evening, we decided to repaint an old bookshelf in my house. It was a hand-me-down from my parents, warped and peeling, but I couldn't let it go. Sarah brought over a can of white paint, brush in hand, hair tied up. "This thing needs saving," she said, eyeing the shelf with determination. "Pretty sure I need saving first," I said, trying not to drip paint on the floor. She laughed hard, but we worked in quiet, the only sounds the brush on wood and the jazz playing from her portable speaker. When we finished, the shelf looked brand new, better than I expected, I said, wiping sweat from my brow. She leaned against the wall, looking at me. "Sometimes it just takes a little care, right?" I nodded, knowing she wasn't just talking about the shelf. She was talking about us, how we were fixing the worn-out parts of each other bit by bit. The next day I had to meet a client in the next town over. I was in such a rush I forgot to lock the back door. Before I left, I taped a note to the kitchen counter. "You need to borrow sugar or just want to hang. Use this." I stuck my spare key to the note, not thinking much of it. When I got back, the trash was emptied, the porch swept, and a fresh lemon loaf sat on the counter. Next to it, a note from her. "Thanks for waiting." My heart skipped. She didn't mention the key, but her actions said everything. From then on, she started leaving traces in my house. A tea mug she forgot to wash, a paperback on the nightstand, a sweater draped over the sofa. No big talk, just her presence growing stronger. One morning I opened my closet and saw a drawer full of her clothes. I laughed, closed it, and felt like the house was finally alive. Winter came, bringing the first real chill. One evening before Christmas, we walked back from the grocery store, bags in hand, our breath fogging in the cold. The streets glowed with holiday lights, from tangled strings to neatly decorated houses. Sarah looked around, smiling. "I used to hate this season," she said softly. "Everything felt so forced, and now?" I asked, glancing at her. She shrugged, hands in her coat pockets. "Now it feels lighter." I didn't need her to say more. Her smile, the way she leaned into my shoulder as we walked, told me she was happy. Back home, I lit the small fireplace. Sarah curled up on the sofa, blanket to her chin, tea in hand. The fire crackled, casting golden light on the walls. "I never thought I'd be here," she said, staring into the flames. "This town?" I asked, sitting beside her. She shook her head, turning to me. "This house, this couch, with someone who makes me feel safe." I looked at her, my heart pounding. "You feel safe?" She nodded, no hesitation. "And you do too." Christmas passed quietly. No mistletoe kisses, no grand declarations, just long mornings, shared meals, and laughter that came easier each day. By January, she left more things at my place, a toothbrush next to mine, slippers under the stairs. It happened naturally, no discussion needed. Then one Saturday afternoon, we were at the kitchen table, me on my laptop, her sipping coffee. She looked up, voice casual. "Is it crazy if I just move in?" I blinked, not shocked but surprised at how simple it felt. I'd been waiting for her to ask, but I didn't expect it to be so easy. "Crazier if you don't," I said, smiling. She laughed, and that was it. We moved her stuff over in a week, no moving truck. Just cardboard boxes, laughter, and a few arguments about where to hang her art. The fence between our yards felt like a distant memory, a symbol of a time long gone. The next month, we learned to live together. I left dishes in the sink too long. She cranked the heater too high at night, but we also learned to comfort each other. Her hand on my back when work stressed me out, my forehead against hers when she needed calm. We were two people carrying old wounds, but together they felt lighter. One spring morning, she came into my home office, wrapping her arms around my shoulders from behind. "I've never felt this steady," she whispered. I swiveled my chair, looking into her eyes. "Then don't let it go. We didn't get married right away. We didn't need to. But we were partners, in the truest sense." Every morning we still waved over the fence, like a private joke, even though the back gate stayed open. Neighbors started calling us the couple next door, and we didn't correct them. One evening, nearly a year after she invited me in, we sat on our porch. "Home now." She leaned her head on my shoulder, her voice soft. Funny how it all started with a wave. I looked at the fence where it began and nodded, and one question. "Want to come in?" She laughed, squeezing my hand. "I'm glad you said yes." "Me too," I said. "And I'm staying, with everything I've got." Ethan and Sarah's story started with a wave over a fence. From small, honest moments that grew into a journey of connection and healing. It's not a Hollywood romance, but proof that sometimes, love and companionship are built from the simplest things: a cup of tea, a smile, or just the patience to stay. Isn't that true for all of us? The little moments, the unexpected people, can change everything if we let them in. This is Hidden Tales, where we share real stories, everyday moments that mean something. If Ethan and Sarah's journey touched you, hit that like button to show us some love. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. Have you ever met someone who changed your life with one small moment? Share your story in the comments, we'd love to hear it. And if you know someone who needs this story, share this video today. Together, let's uncover the hidden beauty in the simplest things. See you with the next story.